From college athlete to digital health founder, Miguel Johns completely rewired his future. In this episode, we talk about growing up in small town Kansas, discovering entrepreneurship on a life-changing trip to Key West, and building a purpose-driven health tech company that's rooted in personal family loss. Miguel shares how he transitioned from being a personal trainer to a tech founder, how he shut down his first startup, and how he used every lesson along the way to build Moment, an AI-powered platform that's helping coaches deliver better outcomes in metabolic health. We'll dig into resilience, ownership, and what it really takes to lead a mission through pivots, pressure, and changing tech landscapes. For any founder figuring it out as they go, this episode is proof that just showing up is even better than being perfect. Welcome to Legacy Unscripted, sponsored by Progeny Coaching. This is the podcast where sports and business collide. I'm your host, Russ Katzman, and here we'll skip the fluff and get straight to the hustle. From athletes turned entrepreneurs to impact-driven business leaders, we dive into the wins, the lessons, and some of those failures that make our legacies worth living. Today, I'm happy to welcome Miguel Johns, founder and CEO of Moment. Miguel, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start with your transition years ago now from being an athlete to an entrepreneur. Talk to me about your years as an athlete and what drove you to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so grew up my whole life. Sports was everything from basketball, football to track. I eventually got a full ride scholarship to play football out at Indiana
Nice.
State. And at the time, as every college athlete probably believes, what are my chances to go pro with this thing? Let me work towards that. And I hadn't really considered anything outside of sports for a career. Well, as most athletes experience, the pros was not in the cards for me. I had a couple injuries and also many other factors, but that sent me down honestly a kind of dark path for a while. I was
Yep.
depressed. I didn't know what my identity was if it wasn't tied to playing football. And I went through this self-discovery process, and it really got kickstarted because I was all down in the dumps, and my brother-in-law, who at the time was in the Navy, invited me on this trip to Key West. And in my head, I'm like, I am not going to Key West, man. I am just not in the mood. I'm broke. I ain't got no clue what I'm going to do.
It's not a place for a depressed guy.
Yeah. But that trip blew my mind. I
Wow.
seen a part of the world that I'd never experienced before. As I mentioned, sports was my entire life. My family, although we were okay, we didn't have a bunch of money. We didn't go on big family vacations. If we ever went anywhere, it was because of sports. So if we had a track meet in the next state, or if we had a tournament in a state over, that was our family vacation. So first of all, Key West opened my mind to a new world and experience that just I was not familiar with. So that was one thing that sparked this new way of thinking. While I was there, I met another entrepreneur who was actually yelling at the TV. He was down at the bar yelling at the TV. The Jets were playing. And I'm like, hey, you a Jets fan? Being a football guy, I figured we could connect over something. And he's like, yeah, I've got 50-yard line seats, second row, season tickets. And so then my brain really starts breaking because I'm like, wait a second, I'm in a place I've never experienced before that seems beyond a luxury to me. And this guy's sitting here and he gave up his season tickets to the NFL game, which is something I also was unfamiliar with. So I asked him, I'm like, well, how are you doing all that? He's like, oh, well, I own a couple businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. I've made my own way, these types of things. And it was like this moment, it was almost like my brother-in-law invited me on this trip so I could meet this guy at the bar and talk about this and have my mind wide open. So then I'm heading back to college. My mind is just racing. I'm looking up on Google and YouTube, what's entrepreneurship, what's it all about? And the more I read into it, the more I realized this is who I am. As an athlete, all the things it's talking about: hard work, discipline, dedication, sacrificing the short term for the long term. All these things just resonated with me so much, and I could not shake that. So when I got back to campus, my eyes were changed and all sorts of new opportunities started revealing themselves to me. So I was doing personal training. I was getting my degree in exercise science. I was taking some amazing classes from some amazing professors. But before this trip, I was just viewing it from a lens that was not revealing all the entrepreneurial opportunities. And when I returned, it became clear as day. There's an opportunity here, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there. And it was that shift in thinking, that shift in adopting this entrepreneurial mindset, which is you look out into the world, you see something you're dissatisfied with, and you creatively think of a solution to solve the problem. And a lot of times that problem might just start with something you're experiencing. Like for me, I come from a long family history of people with diabetes. My dad has type 2 diabetes, which is why I
Mm,
was getting my degree in exercise science. But as soon as my lens changed, I was able to think differently about that. How would I provide a new way of care to my dad if I wanted to guarantee that he improves his health over a lifetime and doesn't end up in the same situation that my grandmother ended up in, which
mm,
was passing away from lots of diabetes complications. So that subtle shift went from what am I going to do with my life? What job am I going to get to? Where are the opportunities around the things I'm very passionate about and that are close to me? And how can I start creating in that direction? Now, that was just the beginning. And there are many, many lessons since then to become a real entrepreneur. But it was that shift in how I viewed the world that was sparked by just understanding this new opportunity and way of thinking. And I still remember it like it was yesterday.
oh, that's great. I love the story. So, one of the things you and I talked about during the introduction was you came from small town USA, and that type of a trip just kind of opened your eyes to everything. And there's some limiting beliefs that come from those of us, and I come from it as well, that live in a small town, that grow up in a bit of a bubble in a small town. What are
Yeah.
some of those beliefs that you've had to kind of challenge over the years and change your approach to?
Yeah. Well, one of the stories I love to tell about, because I'm obsessed with limiting beliefs even to this day, but one of the stories I love to tell is when I was growing up in Newton, Kansas, which most people have probably never even heard of. I would look at places like Walmart or Kroger. And in my mind, I thought the government created that, the government owns it because it was
Oh,
such a big thing that I just couldn't comprehend my next door neighbor starting Walmart. Right.
yeah,
It was this idea that we're in a small town, you play it safe, you go to school, you get a degree, and then you work a good job, and then you repeat the cycle. You have a family in a small town, and then just on and on and on.
yep,
And I don't want to take anything away from my parents because just looking at past generations, and now that I'm a dad with two young daughters, I understand it completely from where my grandparents went to set up to where my parents were, to where they went to set up to where we are. They went through the transition of this is what we have to do so that you can have the opportunity to view the world in a new way and go out and create. And so
yeah.
I felt like this was my lineage's, my family's first opportunity to step out and say, you know what, I can always come back and get this degree, but what if I went and tried to accomplish something bigger? And the only reason I had that opportunity is because my parents. So even though I say there's a bunch of limiting beliefs growing up, my parents would always try to poke at those for me without me truly understanding what they were doing. So the sports example, although I was the best in my town, my mom would always say, well, there's always kids who are better out there, and until you understand what level they're at, then you can't really measure and understand where you're at. And so they were always trying to get us to think a little bit bigger, but it was so hard, especially in your peer group, in your circle, in your school, and in your environment to see beyond that. But the Walmart story is my favorite because that really encompasses we just didn't even think that was possible. No one human, no team of humans that I know could start Walmart. So obviously it's come from somewhere else. And then as I started stepping out of that box and realizing that the famous Steve Jobs quote, everything you see was created by people no smarter than you, that started clicking and taking over my mindset, which was a complete game changer.
No, that's terrific. Yeah, I use the analogy all the time when we're talking about numbers and stuff. Is that looking at the room through a keyhole, right? Even when you start talking about those limiting beliefs, we have given ourselves one version of the truth, and until we open our mind and open that door and allow ourselves to bring in some of the other possibilities, we are going to limit not only our beliefs but our options and what we truly can achieve. So I give it to your parents for challenging you guys and consistently trying to get you to think bigger, think differently. Um, you also mentioned during the introduction that some of the signs over the years were kind of leaning towards that entrepreneurial spirit. What were some of those signs that you saw in yourself?
Yeah. So once I really dove into entrepreneurship, obviously my mind was racing and a lot of memories started flooding back. When I was younger, especially just growing up in the neighborhood where we'd play outside, ride bikes, I always was the guy who would organize the neighborhood. And I've got two
Yep.
younger brothers. I also have an older sister, but at the time she was way too cool for us. She was 4 years older than me, so she
Yeah.
didn't do as much of the neighborhood playing with us during that time. And so I was the ringleader, and I'd organize people to do things that without each other we could not accomplish. So certain types of games, certain types of activities, building a clubhouse, doing these little things that in the moment you're just like, we're just playing. When you look
Yeah.
back at it, it's like that's a skill I have today as well, which is recruiting teams to accomplish things that on our own we could just not do. And so that was one thing. And then as I started getting a little bit older, I was in middle school and my grandpa would have me come work with him. And my grandpa was a true entrepreneur. So he would make tacos, mow lawns. He would
Gotcha.
do all sorts of little things. And he comes from my Mexican side of the family, and some of the stereotypes are actually true in that regard because he was very, very hardworking. And
Yeah.
I remember going to mow lawns with him, making a few bucks, feeling super happy, super pumped, walking some dogs with him, making a few bucks, watching him make the tacos, go to work, sell the tacos. So not only was he getting paid on the job, he was also getting paid for everybody's lunch he was providing. And that, looking back on it again, really stuck with me. My dad is also entrepreneurial. He didn't have
Yeah.
as many opportunities because, of course, he had to pay for four kids growing up and working full time to make that happen. But looking back, he would take on some entrepreneurial tasks, whether it was around the holidays and creating things people could buy for decorations. I remember one time he teamed up with my grandpa and I was helping him put together these like cup lights that were all the rage. I can't remember the years, probably late 90s. But they took that on and started selling those. And my family, whenever we would have a sports trip, they became entrepreneurs. So they would say, it's really going to be tough for us to afford for you and us to go to New Orleans for you to have a race at this national event, but you've earned it. And we feel like we need to give you that
Mm.
opportunity. So you know what? We're going to make some tacos, we're going to make some tostadas, and we're going to sell them in the community, and we're going to pay for
Yeah.
this trip. And so seeing that hard work firsthand and creating something from nothing to give ourselves opportunities, that all of those memories started rushing back to me at that point.
Well, and I think that the hard work that's being done for a specific purpose, right? The biggest thing about entrepreneurs and going down an entrepreneurial venture is if you want it to last, if you want to get through those tough weeks and those tough times, you've got to have that purpose that's bigger than yourself, that's bigger than the specific tasks that you're doing.
Yep.
And I think, even in that little instance of our purpose is to sell enough to be able to send our children where they want to go. Um, that's enough purpose to drive that entrepreneurial spirit, to get up early in the morning, to make the tacos, to get them out there, to start selling them, etc.
Yep. And I want to add
So,
one thing to that because you made
oh,
me
go
think
ahead.
of one more story that I'd feel I've got to include this story. So my mother went back to nursing school when we were young,
Yeah,
and she was a CNA before that. And obviously, for obvious reasons, I got to go back to nursing school because we've got four kids and they're eating us out of a home.
yeah,
They eat too much. And so I remember this clear memory I have of my mom on her bed. My dad's working the third shift. And she's got all these nursing books laid out on the bed, and me and my siblings are just running around the bed, causing havoc, doing all sorts of stuff, playing, bouncing around. And she's sitting there studying, and she ended up graduating with a 4.0. As
mm,
a kid, I'm just like, my mom's sitting here studying and we're playing. As an adult, now that I've got two young daughters, I'm like, oh my goodness, if she can do that, I can do
yeah.
anything. But it goes back to that purpose of I have to do this. I don't have a choice. And so I'm going to see this through and I'm going to do it at the highest level. And yeah, I'll never forget that.
Wow, kudos to mom. That's incredible. So give us the elevator pitch on Moment. I think I kind of know the answer to this question, but kind of give me some of the why, the passion behind it. Just give us that little spiel on what you're doing now.
Yeah. So my company's called Moment, founded it about 3.5 years ago. Our flagship product, which is the one everybody knows us by, is called Milton AI. And Milton is an AI co pilot for metabolic health programs and coaches. So, what does that mean? Well, there's this new world of AI that's taken everybody by storm. And if
Of
you
course.
imagine yourself as a health professional, you're now seeing ChatGPT create workout plans and meal plans and even position itself as people's doctor. And that can be
Yep.
scary. I'm a huge believer that AI in of itself is powerful, but it's not enough. The true solution is human plus AI. And so we've
Yes.
created that platform to empower health professionals so that they can still win in this new age of AI, and they can do it at the level that their clients will expect, which is highly personalized, data driven, around the clock support. We give them the tools to deliver that experience.
Nice. And that came from where? What was the drive for this?
Yeah, so I come from a long family history of people with chronic conditions. My dad has type 2 diabetes. On my mother's side, my grandmother has type 2 diabetes. And on my dad's side, my grandmother on my dad's side passed away of type 2 diabetes complications. She
Mm.
spent her last year of life living with us. We turned one of our bedrooms into a hospital room. It was brutal to watch, not only for her, not only as a kid trying to comprehend everything going on, but also watching the sadness in my father. So when I discovered he had the same condition, that drove me into this maniacal obsession with what's going on with the human body and health and why do people get these diseases. And so I ended up getting a degree in exercise science. Now, when I
Mhm.
was in my exercise, going through my exercise science degree, I had an amazing professor, Dr. Matthew Feeback. And one day, this was after I returned from my trip, so my eyes were open to the new world. He
Yeah.
showed us this documentary called Escape Fire. And that documentary was so inspiring. It was led by Dr. Dean Ornish, who for the last 20 years, probably now 30 years, had been fighting the US healthcare system to get insurance to cover preventive services. So, what does that
Mm.
mean for anybody not in the space? That means right now, and mostly today, insurance will pay for your medications. So, if you're already sick and you need meds or you need surgery, you need to go to the hospital, most of the time, insurance will pay for that. Not all the time, but most of the time. However, if you go to a doctor and say, Doctor, how do I not get diabetes at all? Then the doctor will say, well, you got to go out there and eat better and exercise and track your steps or log your meals, whatever that is. Insurance did not pay for any of that at the time.
Right.
And Dr. Dean Ornish, this documentary was all about we are doing this backwards. Healthcare can be completely transformed if we actually start at the root cause and we help people be healthier throughout their lifetime. And so that opened up a whole new world for me. I started studying digital health. I started studying healthcare transformation. There were a couple of companies who have now gone public or exited in big ways who are kind of just getting started and leading this digital health revolution that was happening. And that just really inspired me. So I left that class after watching that documentary and thought, this is something I can work on for the rest of my life. I can use technology and I can create a service that I would feel happy providing to my father or the tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people out there just like him. And that started me down the path of building technologies to help people get healthier, both on the consumer side, which means I would build apps that I'd sell directly to the people, as
Yep.
well as the provider business side, which means I'd build technology for the people who actually cared for the people going through the having a chronic condition.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a book by Dan Heath called Upstream. It's
Mm,
the same idea of, in regard to businesses, of treating the original root cause as opposed to some of the symptoms. And there's a great story in there. I won't spoil it for the readers. I'll make you go, or the listeners, I'll make you go read it. But it's a great story in there at the beginning that kind of puts it all in perspective. And so it's a great book. Dan Heath, Heath,
yep, I love
Upstream,
Dan. I'm gonna check it
excellent
out.
book. Yeah. So how long have you been doing this, Miguel?
So I've been technically an entrepreneur for about 10 years now.
Okay.
2015 was the year I graduated. I started doing online coaching at the time. I started
Gotcha.
coaching people out of my garage, making meal plans, all of that. I started trying to build actual software around 2017, 2018. That's when I raised my first money and set out on that mission of making it scalable. So before then, from about 2015, 2017, I was using off the shelf tools, just taking different tools here and there, piecing them together and delivering the service myself. And I was able to generate some sales, which in my community, being entrepreneurial in any way stands out because it's a small
Yeah.
community. And so that got me the opportunity to get in front of some actual big time players. And they started challenging me at a completely new level. So they said, this is great. Based on where you're from, you've created your own coaching service. You're using technology to deliver it. People are paying for it, which are some great signs. You are entrepreneurial, but we want you to think even bigger. how would you deliver that service to everybody in the world? And the only way you could do that is through building a platform, a technology system around it. And so that sent me on that path of, okay, now I need to understand this other world, which is building my own products and having engineers and doing the tech thing and going that route. But it was the step by step. So I didn't just jump into trying to build apps. I started with a proof of concept that I could sell, that people got value out of, that they gained results from. And I remember Amy was one of my first clients who ended up losing like 100 pounds, and mostly
Wow.
because Amy was ready to roll and I just provided her the roadmap.
Yep.
But she had great results, and that just gave me the confidence to take the next step. Okay, if we can do this for Amy, we can do it for 100,000 Amy's, a million Amy's, and beyond.
So what happened to those first companies?
Yeah, so KingFit was my first startup where I was in college when I started it, and I
Mhm.
partnered with pretty much my college dorm roommates, and none of us had any experience or any talent to make it happen, but we were trying and we were learning
Yeah.
and we were having a good time. I ended up wrapping that company up around 2021, not after raising some money and building some products. So I raised some first money from a local angel investor who today is still my main angel investor. So he watched me through that journey and then came on the journey with me into my company now. But
Wow.
raised some money, set out to build some products, and learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And when I mean the hard way, I mean by putting yourself out there when you don't know anything and taking a chance, right? You're going to be disappointed a lot. You're going to get told no a lot. Things aren't going to go how you thought they were. Things aren't going to be on the timeline you thought they should be. And unless you've got the tenacity and the grit of an athlete, or anybody else who has similar characteristics, then you will give up and you'll never get to the point where you can actually see the fruits of your labor. That is the name of the game, honestly, in my own opinion, is stick with something long enough until you can figure it out. I'm a huge believer that the human brain is capable of things we can't even imagine. And if
Yep.
you take enough feedback loops, you're gonna notice trends, you're gonna get better, and you're eventually gonna figure something out. So I'll raise some money, built multiple products, learned a lot of lessons, worked with big companies, billion-dollar companies, worked with individual coaches who paid as little as $20 a month,
Mm.
worked with consumers. So we'd build online communities and sell directly to people with diabetes or who are trying to lose weight. And the lessons that I developed in those early years, I call that my entrepreneurial education. My main
Yep.
angel investor at the time watched that development, watched me grow as a person, and decided, you know what, even though we're wrapping this one up because we didn't quite get to the landmark, I'm with you in whatever's next. Now, I'll add one more thing to this story to give some context. When I first set out to raise money for KingFit, my first startup, my pitch was, I'm doing this online coaching. We can use AI to scale it. And there's this AI platform at the time known as IBM Watson. And that
Mm.
is the technology I was looking at, thinking this can help me take what I'm doing, how I coach individuals, and replicate it to millions of people. Now, when I set out to build that, I quickly realized through working with engineers that the technology wasn't quite what they were marketing it as. So they were saying it was pretty much like what OpenAI is today. It was not. It was missing the natural language processing. The thing that makes LLM so special is you can
Yep.
talk to them in any way and it can talk back, right? The IBM Watson technology at the time did not have that. And it was key to the platform I was building because everything we do, even today with Milton, is telling Milton what you did. Hey, I had this for lunch. Hey, I did this for exercise. So let me send you
Yep.
a photo. Let me connect my device. It's all just communication. And that was missing. So, because that was missing, and I learned the hard way after I'd raised money, after I'd put a team together, fell on my face, had to make multiple pivots, and the technology still was not ready by the time that we wrapped that up. Well, we go ahead and move on to the next company, Moment. My angel investor comes with me. He funds the next company. And lo and behold, ChatGPT hits the scene. And it was like, I can't even explain the feeling. I was laying in bed playing with it. I look over at my wife and I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for years. It's finally here. And I can't wait to get started on it.
Now that's interesting because sometimes we shut down. I've seen entrepreneurs do this. They shut down companies at just the wrong moment, right? If they'd have held on
Mhm.
just a little bit longer, if they'd have held out, if they could have found a little more cash to get through another week or another month or just another 6 months. Do you ever go back and think, man, if I could have just held on to KingFit another year, 21, 22 to 23 was, OpenAI was coming out, starting to be popular.
Yeah.
People were, those first users were out there. They were starting to play with it. But the rest of the world just hadn't quite adopted it yet.
Yeah.
Did you look at that and say, man, if I'd have just held out a little bit longer? Or are you just happy with the fact that it's here now and enabling your new company?
Yeah. I'm going to answer that in 1 second. Let me plug my laptop in because I noticed my battery's going down.
That's bad.
All right.
Yeah, we'd hate to have to go back and start over our whole interview.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I think to answer your question, I think the timing was correct to sunset KingFit. And the reason being, I started that company in college. I made a ton of mistakes. And the biggest mistake I made
Yeah.
was in the cap table. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of urban entrepreneurs who want to get people excited to do something and set off into the world, they probably make that same mistake. I
Yep.
had a whole bunch of people on the cap table that one shouldn't have been, and then two were making it impossible for us to really grow the company. And so I think the time was right for KingFit to come to a close. And I when I look back at some of the greatest entrepreneurs, a lot of them do have that first business that they started, they learned from, and then didn't go the way they wanted. One who I can name specifically, who's very famous today, Sam Altman. His first
Mm.
company he started didn't work out, closed it up, but he learned a lot and then moved on. And now, of course, is the CEO of OpenAI. But yeah, so I think the time was right. The learnings were all there, and to really also take care of my main angel investor, who's the one putting the cold hard cash in it, we
Yep.
needed a new cap table, a new setup that would work for him, myself, and future investors.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, and unfortunately, things like Shark Tank and that kind of stuff, young entrepreneurs see this and they think, man, I've got to give up equity in order to get somebody to buy into me.
Mm,
I've got to give up a chunk of my company early on to be able to grow the way I want to. And I kind of pull them off of that and say, no, let's treat this like gold, because this is worse than trying to get divorced when you try to get somebody out of your cap table. It's
yeah,
not easy, and especially if you haven't put the provisions in early on to be able to buy back that equity, or to be able to, transition into a different type of equity, voting, non-voting, profit sharing, et cetera, et cetera. Um, they give up that equity early on, and it's just tough to get it back. You have to treat it like gold.
yeah,
Um, Talk to me a little bit about that difference between, it sounds like KingFit was at least started as more of a service-based company. Now you've transitioned into more of a tech company. Talk to me about the differences between those sectors for you.
yeah. So this, I think KingFit was mostly a service-based company just because I didn't really understand how to run a product company. I was
Right.
trying to be a tech company at the time as well, but just didn't really understand it. When I think of a service-based company versus a product-based company, and I've done a little bit of both, and even when I do consulting, it's technically a service-based company.
Sure.
The main difference for me is you have people, humans delivering the value to the customer, or you have technology delivering the value to the customer. And to make a product company really work, you have to understand the service you're providing them and then build technology around it. So one of the mistakes I made and I see other entrepreneurs make is they get excuse me, all excited about building an app and they dive right into it. Here's how it works,
Mm.
here's how it flow, all these things. But without the details of knowing, here's how I'd provide that service manually and take a customer
Right.
through it, and then look at where I do something that is repeatable or easy to self learn, or any of these types of traits that I can replicate with technology. That's the way I truly think you should do something like this. And Milton today, the way it's built, I was a nutritionist and personal trainer when I came fresh out of college. I was doing my side hustle, my entrepreneur stuff, but I needed my job to pay my bills.
Yep.
And I worked at a gym, and we licensed this nutrition program from another company. I won't say their name because now they're competition, but we licensed this program from them. And so when
Yeah.
I built Milton, I immediately went back to thinking how I deliver that service as a nutrition coach using this off the shelf program, and designed the technology to fill the gaps where it could fit. and still the service was being delivered, but now it's just enabled by technology. And I think that's a mistake I've made. I think a lot of people who get excited about building apps, they make that same mistake. It's best to start with the service, deliver that service, get real life experience, do it multiple times, and then layering on a technology on top of it to understand how to automate it. That's when the magic happens. And if you think about a breakthrough platform like an Uber, for example,
Yeah.
they didn't invent some new way of being in the world. People were ordering taxis, people were paying for transportation, whether it was taking the bus or a train. They understood the service that was already being provided and applied technology to it. And then once the technology was in play, that's when they could innovate in a few more ways, right? So for example, the classic map where it shows you how far the car is. That's something
Sure.
that came afterwards because they had already mastered how the technology works with the real service. So that's a great question. And I think about that a lot now too.
Well, and I think that I tell this to entrepreneurs all the time. I think this isn't just a tech thing. This is just a way of being. A how do I improve my own processes type of thing. People ask me all the time. For instance, they say, "What's the best personal productivity tool?" I can't keep track of my time. What should I be using? I said, "See that paper in front of you? Let's start there, right? Let's do it on paper first. Let's get the to-do list down first. Let's create systems that work for you manually first. Then let's find the technology that can do exactly what you said, right? Automate those things that need to be automated. Um, take care of those things that I don't need to be a part of. They can do it on my behalf. Some of that back end AI thinking that can happen overnight,
Yeah.
rejockeying the schedule or some of that kind of stuff. Um, that's when we start to bring in technology where businesses go wrong, similar to what you're saying about AI is it, or the app creation is they try to jump into the technology and let the technology dictate the process instead of
Hmm.
the other way around.
Yep.
And we really need to work the other way around. We really need to design these processes first. What would it look like? What does good look like? What does great look like? And now, okay, great. I've got the process and it's clunky. How do I make it more efficient? And then you bring in the technology.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
Have you run into an adoption curve, an issue with an adoption curve for your technology? What does that look like for you, and where are you kind of in that life cycle for Milton? Have people started to adopt it? Have you reached the past those first ones, or are you still looking for that key user to come in?
Yeah, great question. So we have real users. We launched our what I'd call like a commercial product. It was still an MVP, which for anybody who's
Okay.
not in the tech space, minimum viable product. Um, we launched that a little bit over a year ago, and we learned very quickly what was wrong with it, where we needed to make improvements, and then we started building version 2 earlier this summer. It is now out.
Yep.
We've got about 40 organizations on it and a growing number of users. We haven't hit the breakthrough yet. So that's what we're working on now. We're working on taking the experience from these first early adopters and transforming that into the next, and actually not even early adopters. If you really look at the adoption curve, we're still in the innovator space, the
Yeah, that's
innovator
what I was wondering
stage.
about.
Yeah. So the innovators, for anybody who's still learning some of this stuff, it's the group of people who know it's not fully ready. They see the vision. They want to be a part of that. They're willing to take a
Yep.
risk. They're okay with the bugs, and they're going to help you get some of those out. Now, the purpose of the innovators from a business standpoint is to work with them very closely, learn from them, so that you have something you can take to the first wave of early adopters and then move into the early majority, late majority, and so on. We are in that stage where we're trying to cross that chasm. We're trying to take some of these early results and turn that into marketing material that brings us in the next wave of customers. And so I'm living that fully right now. Now, we're also playing against another trend that's happening in the market, which is when we launched this a year ago, AI was still the hottest miracle on planet Earth. And so
Yeah.
by just saying this is AI, coaches were willing to take a call and learn about it and be amazed. Now there's a bunch of AI tools out there, and now there's even AI disappointment, I would call it, which is I
Yeah.
use an AI tool that promises me all these things. It showed me this magical demo, and then it doesn't do any of the things. And I think people are entering that space of like, can I just get one AI tool that actually works good besides ChatGPT? And we're fighting against that now, which
Yeah.
makes the marketing process harder, but also brings us back to core business fundamentals, right? for how long can you truly say this is AI and think you're going to get sales? You have to deliver business value. And that's been something we are now moving towards, which is marketing this less and less as an AI platform and more as you're going to save time, you're going to generate more revenue, you're going to deliver better outcomes for your clientele. Here's how you're going to do that. And then we show them the platform at that point. And we don't even have to mention AI in that sales process, which I think is becoming a good thing because people are really become disappointed with some of the tools that are out there.
Yeah. Heard you say crossing the chasm. Okay, Jeffrey Moore. Shout out to 20 years ago and then some. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, some of these books are long lasting. You got to love them. Um, I look at the AI, and you talked about it just a second ago. It's been a land grab, right? Ever since, it kind of we talked about, OpenAI and Sam and what he did with ChatGPT, et cetera. And it came out, was popular. People went nuts for it, once they really realized that we can get on this train. And then it became a land grab, and everybody had an AI. Everybody had one for specific purposes. Oh, mine's for this, mine's for that. When in general, to your point about disappointment, we're finding they all kind of do the same thing. They
Yeah.
all have the same sing-songy tone. They all come out with the same type of recommendations. They all come, and then if everybody's kind of the same, then who do we really want to have our loyalty to? Right. It's going to come down to a few major players that get out there and are popular and in front of people and are in the most places and seem to cover the most things. And that will cover the majority of the market. And then you'll have some niche players.
Yeah.
Which of those do you see yourself being? Do you see yourself being in that medical niche, or where do you want to play?
Yeah, so I am very focused on a niche right now, and I've got my strategy is there's two paths I believe forward for us. One is to dominate the niche in regards to being their AI tool, which for us that's health professionals outside of the four walls of healthcare, and that's really
Okay.
important because there's highly funded AI startups within the four walls of healthcare who
Yep.
have to play a different game, which is sometimes requires FDA, requires a lot of clinical validation, requires long sales cycle, big VC backing, all these different things. We want to avoid all of that. We see there's an opportunity that's more of a SaaS driven model where we can reach millions of coaches who aren't tied to a major hospital system who can decide to purchase and use our product today if they wanted and get started by the evening. That is the niche I want to go after for many reasons. But once we establish ourselves there, we've got two routes, I believe. One is we develop a proprietary, unique data set that becomes extremely valuable to the big players who are here now and will continue to grow and will continue to gobble up unique data sets so that they can be the master AI. So, for
Yep.
example, in diabetes, that might look like Dexcom, who's a multi billion dollar diabetes device company. They're
Yep.
starting to roll out some AI technologies, but for them to be the king diabetes AI, they've got to beat Abbott, they've got to beat Apple, they've got to beat other massive $100 billion companies. And what we know about AI today is the only way to do that is if you've got unique data sets that are actually valuable. And the way all of these LLMs got started, and the reason why they all sound the same, is they're all trained on the same thing.
Yeah.
Everything on the internet, they're trained on that. And the unique data set opportunity is if I've got a platform that uses AI and has true engagements between coach and client and gets smarter with each engagement, now I've got a data set that's not on the internet that we own that lives in between this dynamic between the coach and client, and that becomes valuable over time. And so that leads me to two different paths. One would be the opportunity to create new products and build a billion-dollar business based on other products outside of AI. And the
Sure.
other path is, of course, acquisition, where one of these massive diabetes or metabolic health or fitness companies comes around and says, we'll take your customer base and the data set so that we can be the kings of this world. Which in both, I mean, right now I'm going with the flow, but I do plan long term for both options. Whether we're going to keep going as our own company and roll out multiple products based on the data we collect, or we're continuing to build this data up, and then we've got a much larger company who comes around and buys us.
Gotcha. No, I love it. I think you guys have a pretty bright future ahead of you for where Milton's going and how people start to adopt it.
Thank you.
So Before we wrap, I want to take you back a decade. I want you to go back to those early days of being an entrepreneur, sitting in the dorm room with the other guys. You guys are designing this stuff. What do you want to tell that kid about being an entrepreneur? What do you want to give him for advice? The top 2 or 3 things that you tell him.
Man, that is now I'm in my head, I'm picturing myself walking into my old apartment and looking at myself.
Be
I would
careful what you
say,
see.
yeah, I would say, oh man, I'd say, kid, you are about to go on a journey that you just can't even predict. There's going to be a lot of things that will not go your way. There's going to be a lot of very difficult times. But I promise you, if you just keep going, if you just keep going, if you just keep at it, if you just keep taking swings, it will be well worth it, whether it succeeds or not. You will learn more than you ever thought was possible. You will be opened up to a world and to people you could have never imagined. And all you have to do, your only requirement is to show up every day. Rain, sleet, or snow, whether you feel like it or you don't, whether yesterday was the hardest day of your life or today is, or it was the best, you got to show up and you got to do it every day. And if you do that for the next 10 years, you will be in a place where whether your business is working or not, you will have developed the skills and the talent that makes you very valuable in the market. And you'll have to turn down jobs to keep pursuing your dream. Great paying jobs, you'll be turning them down because you put in the time and the effort to learn. That's what I need you to commit yourself to for the next 10 years is learning and showing up. And if you do that, you're going to be all right, kid.
I like it. I like it. Just show up. Well, Miguel, this has been a pleasure. Is there anything I haven't asked that you want to make sure we got out there for the audience?
Nothing I can think of. I think the story was captured well. I'm a former athlete, so other athletes listening to this, if you're getting started on that entrepreneurial journey, you have a major advantage as an athlete. You've been through adversity. You've been through knowing what it takes to learn something new and to face competition and to have things not go your way and still have to bounce back. So please lean into that. That's something that a lot of people who come from the other side, very smart, intelligent people, very tech driven people, they don't have those natural capabilities. And often I've seen many times people much smarter than myself fail and fail quickly because they lack what us athletes have naturally. So lean into that and you'll be all right.
Amen. I appreciate it. Well, Miguel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So that's a wrap for this episode of Legacy Unscripted. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't just let it sit. Take action today to build your future. Make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with someone who may need to hear it. And if you've got a story to share or you just want to connect, you know where to find me. Until next time, keep it real, keep it bold, and keep living your legacy.